Thank you all for being here today. My name's Dos Williams. I'm the 1st District County Supervisor. And the community of Montecito and Santa Barbara County in general have all been through a lot, particularly in the areas of the slide. It has been exhausting to evacuate many times. It has been dismaying to come back to mud and try to excavate mud to save their homes. But it's also been inspirational to see the community pull together. And though we are tired, we are determined. And we are here today because we have to, both in government and the community, continue to get better and learn more from every disaster on how to prepare for the next. And so we are here today to try to share the latest information with you, the public, so that you can make informed decisions, so that you can ask questions, both here and in our 6 p.m. town hall that'll be down the street at MUS, and that you can ask questions at further dates from the people here and from our office, because we want to prepare this community for the next event and for the continuing cleanup. With that, I want to turn it over to Rob Lewin. I suppose I could call him our emergency services czar, since people like that term right now. Rob, come on up.
Thank you, Supervisor, and I want to thank all the elected officials who have joined us today. They have continued through this whole emergency to provide us important leadership, and we appreciate that support. Good morning. As we continue moving forward on recovery, we also need to be prepared for future storms. And we can all do both. Today, we are going to provide the public with an interactive map that shows the risks associated with future storms that exceed or are a ½ an inch per hour or more. The map that you see on the screen shows all the burn areas that are of concern in the county, including the Alamo, the Sherpa, the Whittier, and of course the Thomas burn areas. This map was developed using comprehensive studies conducted by the United States Forest Service Burn Area Emergency Response Team, or known as the BEAR Team, the CAL FIRE Watershed Emergency Response Team, or known as the WERT Team, and the State Watershed Corps Team. These teams consisted of hydrologists, engineers, engineer geologists, soil scientists, civil engineers, foresters, and biologists. And the data was peer-reviewed. Today with me is Kevin Cooper, who led the BEAR team, and he will be available to you for any questions following. Our flood control district and my office, the Office of Emergency Management, were engaged with all these teams. Together, the efforts of each of these teams has given us this map. The map takes into account the burn areas and the impacts of the 1/9 storm debris flows and the choke points that it created. The map will be further updated as further analysis occurs. With me also today is Tom Fayram, who's the Deputy Director of the Flood Control District, and he too will be available for questions. Let us not be fooled that the mountains have flushed the debris from the 1/9 storm. The mountains and the canyons are still loaded with rocks, sediment, and other debris. Our immediate health and safety priorities right now are to clean the debris basins and to clean the channels, because these places are the places that catch material coming off the mountains and the canyons, so we are ready for the next storms. This is our focus every day. So now let me describe the map to you and how it works. First of all, we have 3 colors on the map. The red area is known as the extreme risk area. For properties in this area that are located, they are in extreme risk areas. That means that debris flows similar to the 1/9 debris flow could impact them. If rain is predicted to be a ½ inch per hour or more, they would be ordered to evacuate. They should leave immediately and seek shelter and location outside the evacuation area. The yellow and gray areas are high-risk areas. Properties located in the high-risk areas, if rain is predicted again to be ½ inch per hour or more, they would be asked to leave, and because of the risk of being cut off from essential services like natural gas, potable water, sewer, electricity, cellular phone service, and other utilities for multiple days. Roads may become impassable and even deadly. People should leave immediately and seek shelter in a location outside the evacuation area. The map descriptions are both in English and Spanish, as well as our web pages are both in English and Spanish. We now need the public that lives in or near burn areas to go to this interactive map and identify what the risk is to them. They can access that at readysbc.org. That's readysbc.org. You also need to sign up for Aware and Prepare alerts if you haven't already, and the link is also on that web page. If we can't reach you, we can't alert you. And now I'd like to introduce the Division Chief of Operations for the Montecito Fire Department and one of the incident commanders during the 1/9 storm, Kevin Taylor.
Thank you, Director Lewin. Now that we've had an opportunity to review the new interactive map, I would like to talk to you about what we are going to ask you to do when a storm is forecast to be greater than ½ inch per hour. And then I'm going to describe to you what your emergency responders are going to be doing at the same time. We utilize ½ inch per hour because that is the amount of rainfall that can cause a debris flow similar to what we experienced in the 1/9 debris flow event. We are generally first alerted of these storms by the National Weather Service about 72 hours before the storm is forecast to arrive. When that occurs, we will be issuing a pre-evacuation advisory to alert you of this expected storm. Emergency responders from all disciplines will meet and review the forecast and begin implementing our updated response plans that have been refined since the 1/9 debris flow. 48 hours before the storm, if the forecaster's confidence level improves or remains unchanged, the Sheriff's Office will issue a recommended evacuation warning. This is done 48 hours in advance to give you time to plan your evacuation. At the same time, your emergency responders will continue to implement our incident action plans. 24 hours before the forecast arrival, the Sheriff's Office will issue a mandatory evacuation order. When you receive this order, it's time for you and your family members to leave. Emergency responders at 24 hours will begin pre-staging resources in the areas identified as extreme and high-risk areas. 12 hours before the rain forecast is scheduled, that mandatory evacuation order will become effective. And we ask that all community members be out of the areas that have been evacuated. Emergency responders will begin to arrive from outside the area to reinforce our local responders. 2 hours prior to the forecast storm, road closures will be enforced by law enforcement, and the emergency responders will be moved to safe locations in the extreme risk area and the high risk area to be ready to respond to the potential debris flows. As you can clearly see, our evacuation plan has been refined since the 1/9 debris flow. Our goal is to clearly communicate to you what the risk to you and your family is, what we want you to do when one of these alerts is issued, and where you can go to be safe. The number one thing you can do today to prepare yourself and your family is to sign up to receive alerts at readysbc.org. Now I'd like to introduce Sheriff Bill Brown, who will explain the evacuation process in detail.
Thank you, Kevin, and good morning, everyone. You've just heard about the significant and heightened danger that emergency managers, first responders, and those who live below the various burn areas are now facing due to the damaged condition of the watershed. Experts tell us that as a result, it will now take less rainfall to move debris than it did on January the 9th. Accordingly, a strong possibility exists that we will need to call for future evacuations. The Sheriff's Office is responsible for conducting those evacuations, and that is what I want to talk to you about today. Evacuations are inconvenient and troublesome, but they are also temporary and incredibly important. Most importantly, they can be life-saving. We have developed 3 specific evacuation categories with clear definitions as to what each one means and what course of action should be taken. The 3 evacuation categories are as follows: a pre-evacuation advisory, a recommended evacuation warning, and a mandatory evacuation order. A pre-evacuation advisory means that a determination has been made that you are in an area where there is a possible risk to life or property. Community members in a pre-evacuation advisory area should immediately begin preparations to leave and should closely monitor the developing situation. If at any time you feel threatened, you should not wait for additional notification, but rather you should take action to leave immediately. The next category is a recommended evacuation warning. If you are told you are in a recommended evacuation warning area, it means that a danger exists, and it has been determined that you live in an area where there is a high risk for loss of life and property. If you are in a recommended evacuation warning area, the Sheriff's Office strongly encourages you to relocate to a safer location for your own safety. While personal discretion is allowed, it is not advised. People with access or functional needs and those who own large animals should evacuate immediately if they receive a recommended evacuation warning. The third category is the most serious and urgent: the mandatory evacuation order. If you receive a mandatory evacuation order notice, it means that a danger exists and it has been determined that you are in an area where there is an extreme risk for loss of life and property. The Sheriff's Office will order you to relocate immediately to a safer location. Personal discretion is not an option, and a mandatory evacuation will apply to the public in general. People who do not comply with a mandatory evacuation order will not be forcibly removed, but they do so, ignoring that order, at their own peril, and they should not expect rescue or other life-saving assistance after the onset of an emergency event. So to recap, there's the pre-evacuation advisory, which means there is a possible risk to life or property, and you should begin preparations to leave. There's a recommended evacuation warning, which means there is a high risk to life and property, and you should relocate to a safer location. And mandatory evacuation order, which means there is an extreme risk to life and property, and you are instructed to leave immediately. To review those terms, or for a copy of those definitions, you can please go to readysbc.org. Again, that's readysbc.org. This new evacuation terminology will be used in the future for both fire and storm-related debris flow events. But I want to make it very clear that the timeline protocol that we're introducing today applies specifically to projected storm events and the accompanying danger of debris flows. We will be using a different protocol during any future wildland fire events. It will be very important for residents to become familiar with the new protocol and terminology, and for them to understand if they live in an area of extreme or high risk. If a severe storm is predicted to hit our county, it is important to remember that even if you live in an area that is not directly adjacent to a water course, you may still be in a high-risk area, and we may still urge you or order you to evacuate. This would be because of a strong likelihood of you losing your utilities, including electricity, potable water, sewer, gas, cable, cellular phone service, and also the fact that you could be stranded for as long as 15 days. By remaining in the evacuated area, you could also exacerbate the problem because you may subsequently need to be rescued or evacuated on an emergency basis, thereby tying up our limited first responder resources. So for these reasons, we ask everyone who lives below the Alamo, Sherpa, Whittier, and Thomas fire burn areas to make sure that you find out what your location is, if you're in a high risk or if you are in an extreme risk area, and develop a personal and a family plan, and do it today. Consult the county's interactive map and learn whether or not you live in that area of extreme or high risk. Know where you're going to go in the event that you are evacuated. We'll endeavor to use every means possible to notify members of our community of an evacuation. But understand that depending on the timing, functionality of technology, available resources, and the size of the area to be evacuated, we may not be able to knock on every door or deliver messages to every phone or computer. And in fact, some people, believe it or not, don't have telephones or computers or read the newspapers. So we ask that you share any messages that you receive about approaching storms with your family members, with your friends, and with your neighbors. And remember, as has been said, to sign up for the Aware and Prepare alerts before a storm is underway. And you can do that by going to the county's website or to the sheriff's office website. I also want to emphasize that the protocol and the timeline that we have just presented to you is what we will use if we receive sufficient warning from the National Weather Service about an impending storm. But it's important to also know that there could be rare instances where a rogue storm cell hits our community and causes flash flooding and debris flow with very little warning, and there may not be time to evacuate. One such storm hit us in January of 2017 and caused extensive flooding, debris flow, and damage at the El Capitan campground located below the Sherpa fire burn area. We will be developing a comprehensive public education plan in the future that will address such a possibility to educate people to seek high ground. But in the meantime, know that this could be by moving to a temporary refuge area, such as a school, a church, or another building located at a higher elevation. Moving to high ground could also mean moving laterally to a higher elevated street, building, or neighborhood that is nearby. And in extreme circumstances, where a flash flood is already in progress, moving to high ground could mean moving immediately up to a second story in your home or even onto a countertop. Please remember that our top priority is always your safety and protection. Many areas of our county have become vulnerable, and for the next few years, we will all be experiencing a new normal about how we must deal with the potential dangers of approaching storms and resulting flooding and debris flows. It is now everyone's responsibility to prepare now by understanding what steps we will take to protect you if a storm hits, but also what steps you can take and should take ahead of time to protect yourself and your family. I thank you, and now I would like to introduce Captain Cindy Ponce from the California Highway Patrol.
Good morning. When a pre-evacuation advisory is initially given for a storm, the CHP will coordinate with Caltrans to pre-position resources to close the 101 northbound at the 150 and southbound at Milpas, along with all the on-ramps in both directions between the 150 and Milpas. Approximately 2 hours before the storm's anticipated arrival, we will begin to close the 101 to keep people out of the extreme risk and high-risk areas. We know that this will be a huge inconvenience for everyone. However, it is necessary to protect lives. We ask that everyone follow the evacuation orders when they are given and stay out of the area until it is deemed safe. We thank the community for their continued support and their patience as we work to restore to a new normal, yet stay vigilant in our preparation for future storms. And now I'll turn it back over to Rob Lewin.
Thank you, Captain Ponce. I'd like to transition now to talk about debris. This is of great concern to the community as well as a concern to us, and I want to speak about the things that are underway in that effort. First, let me talk about public debris. This is debris that is coming off of public facilities such as debris basins and in the channels. We all know the importance of clearing out the debris basins and the channels that run through our community. This work by the County Flood Control District and the Army Corps of Engineers continues. Much progress has occurred, and there is much more to do. We are 50% done on the debris basins. Debris from this work is taken to a quarry in Buellton. The debris from public right-of-ways is taken to a sorting facility where it is separated. The rocks are taken to a quarry and the soil is taken to the beach, and the vegetation is chipped for future utilization. So that's our current plan for public debris. What about private debris, which is of great concern to all of our residents? The private property material currently can be taken to landfills, mining sites, and other outlets identified on our information sheet provided by our Public Works Department. We know for most this is expensive due to fees and hauling long distances. We know we need more alternatives to this option. So here's what we are currently working on. We are rolling out a debris exchange website. The listserv will provide an opportunity for people who have soil and rocks to find people who want soil and rocks. The soil that was deposited on people's property was randomly tested in 10 locations, and in all cases the soil tests indicated it was suitable for domestic use in landscapes. It may also have use on farm fields. We all know that the Montecito sandstone rocks are beautiful and may also have value as building material. This exchange will provide an opportunity for people to benefit. The county will not be involved in the exchange. This is a market-driven process. We are merely providing the platform. We have asked permission from the state to expand the capacity of the Tehigas landfill. This will allow for debris to be taken there at reduced cost to the current charge and ensure that the lifespan of the landfill for regular waste is not reduced. We are continuing to look at Ventura County neighbors to determine if there are old mining sites that would have value and would accept the material to remediate the mining site. Still, much work has to be done on this. We are trying to find a large piece of property in the community to create a temporary transfer station so we can separate the material and provide a place for people to take that material to locations close by. We have put together a household hazardous waste pickup program that we will be announcing to folks in the disaster area when and it'll be a curbside pickup day that will be arranged. This will be the material that people typically have in their garages, like paints and fertilizers. And finally, we are encouraging people to find innovative ways to keep the material on their property, both in the short term and the long term. To work with your architects and engineers to identify how to improve your property with the material on site. We ask that if you choose to do this, that you must ensure that the material does not pose a threat during future storms to your neighbors or the community. And finally, our message is clear. We want people to sign up for alerts. We need them to go to readysbc.org and do that. And we need them to go to the interactive map and understand the risks that they have on their properties. We can all do this. Let us not be scared. Let us simply be prepared.
Thank you to all of our speakers. We're going to take questions from the media, but I have a few announcements first. We want everyone to know that the materials that were presented here today and that you're seeing will be posted to the website. And thank you again for repeating the web address to make sure everyone has it, readysbc.org. I also would like to recognize our County Supervisor, Doss Williams. Thank you so much for being here. We also in the room have the rest of other supervisors from the county. So first, we've got 2nd District Representative Janet Wolf, 3rd District Supervisor Joan Hartman, 5th District Supervisor Steve Lavignino. We also have Santa Barbara City Mayor Kathy Murillo, so thank you so much for being here today. Also wanted to quickly remind everyone that at 6 p.m. tonight at Montecito Union School, make sure I get the right address, 385 San Isidro, we have a community meeting, 6 p.m. tonight. The same speakers will be there, plus we have additional, and we'll be able to take questions from the community. And I think with that, there's one other thing that I wanted to ask everyone. You heard Chief Taylor mention it. We would like everyone's cooperation in naming this event the 1-9 debris flow. We're going to start using that. We'd like everyone else to hopefully follow along. So we have one name, and this is not just a mudslide. Debris is a lot more than just mud or water. So if you could help us in that, we'd greatly appreciate it. And I think with that, take our first question.
To be clear, in the last event, there was mandatory and then there were voluntary evacuation areas. Presumably that will no longer be used, is that correct? And would it be also fair to say that mandatory evacuation areas that existed in the previous event, but not necessarily if it happened today, be the same areas today, right?
In answer to your first question, yes. In the previous event, we utilized the terminology that we had before, which was a mandatory evacuation or a voluntary evacuation order. And in this case, we recognize that with respect to the latter category, the voluntary evacuation order, we found after the January 9th event that for some, the focus was on the word voluntary rather than on the word evacuation. And the reality is that some people misinterpreted that and believed that there was a measure of safety there that there really wasn't. And as a result, we took a look at this and have developed the new evacuation terminology, which we think is clearer in terms of the fact that an evacuation is still recommended and the difference in it being ordered. The other part of the question that you related to really was more in terms of the maps that we utilize to conduct the evacuation, which are overlaid on top of an area where a threat exists. Those are really more in terms of trying to define the area in such a way that we can let the public know clearly which streets are blocked and which areas above or to the side of them are now in an evacuation zone. And they're also utilized for us to have know what kind of resources we need in terms of traffic control points and the number of people we'll need to conduct that evacuation area. We'll still be using those in fires and in incidents like this to overlay on top of lost the map here now, but in terms of the new designation of areas that are either in red or yellow here, depending on where it is. But the reality is that what we saw in the January 9th event was that the storm that was predicted and the storm that we prepared for was not the storm that we received. It was of much greater intensity. And initially, emergency managers were told by the scientists and by the Geological Survey and others that their estimate for extreme damage was up high, up near the mountain areas. And that hasn't really been out too much in the press, but the reality is that damage was estimated to be above Mountain Drive, not just above Valley Road. And Valley Road, or 192, was selected because it was an east-west arterial that was easily identified, and it also happens to be about the only east-west thoroughfare, if you will, in the Montecito community that was used for that. So we'll still have to look at those types of maps to determine where evacuation zones are in the event of fires, but we're rethinking, as in essence, what's the danger exists obviously all the way from the mountains to the ocean based on the incident that occurred on the 9th. And that's why we've developed this plan. And the other thing is that you may say, well, if I live here, I live here, I live here, you don't show me as being in danger of any debris flow or fall, which is true, but you are in danger of becoming someone who's going to be living on an island for a while, because the potential for the freeway and for all of the streets that would allow you to get out of your home and out of the community very well could be blocked in the event of a future occurrence. So it's important to recognize that we want you to know if you're in the extreme danger area, but if you're anywhere in this community, you are at risk, a high risk of being affected by this potential event.
Next question. Do I have any other questions? Tom Bolton with Newshawk.
Answer Bill gave. So do we understand that you are no longer using the evacuation zones that were used in the Thomas fire and had been set up prior to the January 9th event?
And repeat the question.
The question was whether or not we're going to still use the evacuation zones. We still will use that system to conduct evacuations, but it'll be overlaid on top of whatever the incident happens to be. And we'll be using it not only for storm-related events, but for fires as well.
Sheriff Brown? I know the focus, obviously, here we're in Montecito, the focus is on everything's happening in Montecito, but we obviously have the other 3 burn zones. And is there concern about having resources spread too thin or being able to be pre-positioned if, for instance, the Alamo fire, which is in Rudd County, should become a problem?
Well, there is a concern. It is a very wide area that these 3 burn areas occupy, and we do have limited resources. As you have seen, we have a wonderful ability in the state of California to bring in additional resources, but it takes time to do that. And in the event of an extreme emergency and trying to get the message out, that's why I said we may not have the ability to, don't wait for a knock at your door from a deputy sheriff or a search and rescue team member. It may be that you have to, pay attention to the media, pay attention to your neighbors, the information that's getting out into the community, and make that decision to go before there's an official who's bringing that message to you.
Sheriff, I have one more. The wireless emergency alert system, which I believe was used, 10 minutes before. There were some concerns about that. To be clear, that is a system which alerts every cell phone that's turned on, right? Not just the people who signed up. How do you see the WIA system figuring into this new plan? How do you plan to use it?
I'm going to defer that question to Rob Lewin, but I will just say one thing, and that is another thing that a lot of people don't realize happened in this emergency, and why you can't rely solely on your cell phone or your computer. And that was that the Verizon cell tower was knocked out as a result of this incident, which meant that the alert did not go through Verizon to Verizon subscribers from the National Weather Service, for example. And it's important to recognize that technology, as great as it is, it's not perfect. And if we have a storm event, that storm can impact the infrastructure for that technology. And I'll refer the WIA question to Rob.
And I'll throw in, get a copper landline. Our 911 to cell in this state is not a good system. Get a copper landline.
Again, the question is about the WIA system and our use of it. First of all, the wireless emergency alert system that the federal government has came out in 2012, and it needs attention. And the Federal Communication Commission understands that, and they are telling us that in November of 2019 we'll see changes that will make a significant impact. The system will allow for more than 90 characters, which is quite a limitation for us when we're trying to put out an emergency message. And it will also allow us to do geo-targeting. One of the current problems that we have, not just in this county but across the country, and it's affected many counties in this state, is when a WIA alert is put out, it sends that message over a vast area. The folks in Santa Maria, the folks even in Nipomo and San Luis Obispo County have received our WIA alerts for an evacuation occurring down here on the south coast of the county. This is not acceptable, of course, and it, of course, is very disruptive to people. Particularly, it's very fearful for them in the middle of the night. We have successfully used the WIA system in this county since over a year ago during the January and February storms. We have used it countless times successfully. We've also had problems with it, as have many, many jurisdictions across the country. The WIA system is our modern-day siren system. We need it to work. A couple of things the public needs to do, though, is they need to leave their phone in the on position. You can put them in the sleep in a vibrate or quiet mode, but they will be activated if they're on, but not when they're not. The other more important thing is that people need to sign up for our alerting system at awareandprepared.org, or they can go to readysbc.org. There's a link there that will take them to a simple sign-up process. This will allow them to get emails, text messages. We will call their cell phones. We will call their landlines, all by signing up for this. And these messages will be easy to do. We can also, from the same platform, issue the WIA and the emergency alert system broadcasts over radio and television. Again, the emergency alert system that's done by radio and television also has plenty of problems with it and needs to be addressed. And we need that system to work. On the night of the 1/9 storm, I want to assure everyone that all of our processes worked. the National Weather Service, as they are responsible for issuing weather alerts, that system did have a problem on the Verizon network. When we recognized that in our Emergency Operations Center, that none of the Verizon phones had activated, we put together our own WEA alert and issued it. That was not in our procedures at the time, but we recognized the need to do that, and we did that. This system can be better. We need support from the federal government to arrange that, and we're looking forward to have that.
Just one quick follow-up. There were some concerns raised that the WEA system was activated 10 minutes before the event, which may not have given people enough time to get away, but enough time to get up and out and dazed and in the wrong place, more vulnerable place. What are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, we initiated this evacuation 30 hours prior to the storm's arrival, using all methods except for WEA, because that is used for imminent threat, and weather-related ones are done by the National Weather Service. It was never our intention to put out a WEA alert 30 hours before an emergency. We'd used all other forms, including social media, regular media, and our Aware and Prepare alerting system, and we landlined, called every single resident in the areas from below the burn areas. So we had effectively used all of our systems, and we believe they were effective in notifying people.
As it relates to debris cleanup, you said that you're about 50% as it relates to cleaning up public areas. What's the timetable on how long you think it'll be before you're 100%? And what's it looking like with regard to private cleanup? How are the communities that are devastated looking? Is there any progress being made?
So first on the public debris, I believe our target date is, help me out Tom, March 30th? March 15th is a target date to have all of the debris basins cleared out. Again, we're at 50% on that. The channels, Tom, about how long for the channels to be cleared out?
Just I estimate a month.
So in about a month we'll have the channels cleared out, and that of course is important because the channels have rearranged themselves. They're filled in. There's blockages in them, or what we call choke points, that is rediverting water in the case of a future storm. As far as public debris, there's a lot of effort going on out there. It's clear to see as you move around our community. And we know people are taking care of it. We're trying to now to come up with some methods to make that even easier for them. I know they need to engage with their insurance companies. They need to get their contractors on site, and we are certainly trying to provide as much guidance as we can in that endeavor.
I'll just add that it's not that you see it when you're moving around the community, you see it when you're not moving around the community. For the average person anywhere in the area, you're spending 45 minutes to an hour stuck on the freeway, and you can see that progress is being made even though it's slowing down your movement.
With regard to insurance companies, we've been reading stories and hearing stories that some homeowners are having issues with their insurance companies because there's this controversy brewing that coverage is not in effect because this was a flood, and people are contesting, well, the flood is a result of the fire. That was just cut off a few weeks before the flood. What are you guys hearing from people here in the community, and is there any action being taken to help these folks through this insurance claim process?
The only actions that we're doing to help people with it is to direct them, of course, to their insurance companies, as well as I know the state insurance commissioner has been here, and he's held a town hall meeting with folks. It's clear in his mind, from what I heard, that the debris flow was a direct result of the fire. And in his mind, fire insurance should be providing it, if you excuse me for speaking for him.
That's all the time that we have for questions, but of course our experts will stay around for interviews. But also, just to follow up on that, the Disaster Recovery Center is still open at 1 North Calle Cesar Chavez, and FEMA, the SBA, and many other federal agencies, our state Cal OES is here. So the assistance for homeowners continues, and those representatives will also be in attendance tonight at the community meeting. Thank you. Thank you for being here.